Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the JCC of Metro Detroit's 69th Annual Detroit Jewish Book Fair. My name is Brenda Brook, and I'm chair of the Book Fair Steering Committee. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to Food Day on this Monday morning and to a conversation and cooking demonstration based on the Instant Pot Kosher Cookbook, 100 Recipes to Nourish Body and Soul by Paula Shoyer. The goal of the Detroit Jewish Book Fair is to bring the best new Jewish books and authors from around the world to Metro Detroit. This year, the rooms we're all sitting in may be different, but that goal remains the same. The book fair runs through this Wednesday, December 9th, and we have an exceptional lineup of events planned for the next few days. To see our full event schedule, learn about ways to support book fair, watch events you may have missed, and find our online store where you can buy the Instant Pot Kosher Cookbook and plenty of other books, visit our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org/bookfair. This year, in order to provide as much programming to the community as possible, we've made all of our events free of charge. So if you enjoy this event and other book fair events, please consider becoming a patron. It's not too late, or donating to book fair. And remember, no gift is too small. You can do this at our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org/bookfair. We rely on community support to make this annual event possible. So thank you in advance for becoming part of our family. We have a really special event for you this morning, and we want you to be a part of it. So you can ask questions and offer comments in the YouTube comment section, or by texting the number in the corner of your screen. Our speakers have a great discussion prepared, and they will take as many of your questions as they can. And while you're here at the YouTube channel, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the reminder bell. And that way you'll never miss any of our exciting events. The focus of today's event is the Instant Pot Kosher Cookbook, 100 Recipes to Nourish Body and Soul. We have with us the author, Paula Shoyer, who will be demonstrating recipes from her book with the help of Jared Bobkin, who will be moderating the discussion. This fabulous book is being released in January, and we are so lucky to have Paula Shoyer for a pre-release demo. Jewish food and the Instant Pot are a natural fit. So many traditional Jewish dishes are soups and stews prepared before Friday night and kept warm throughout Shabbat. For decades, Jewish families relied on slow cookers, but lamented the time required. Now, the Instant Pot allows for shorter cooking times without compromising flavor or texture. But there's much more here than soup and stews. Using recipes from the Instant Pot Kosher Cookbook, Paula Shoyer will show you how to make your favorite kosher foods with a lot less sauce. Paula graduated from the Ritz Escoffier pastry program in Paris and teaches French and Jewish baking classes in the Washington, D.C. area, and conducts baking demonstrations across North America. She's a contributing editor to KosherScoop.com, Joy of Kosher with Jamie Geller, Whisk, Hadassah Magazine, and has appeared on major TV cooking shows. She's also the author of The New Passover Menu, The Holiday Kosher Baker, and The Healthy Jewish Kitchen, among other cookbooks. Our moderator, Jared Bobkin, is an executive chef who has been twice featured on Fox's Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay. He has worked at high-end restaurants throughout Metro Detroit, as well as high-end private clubs, and is the culinary director of Flavored Nation. And in full disclosure, he's my nephew and the book fair's resident chef. Please join me in welcoming Paula Shoyer and Jared Bobkin.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So welcome to my first event of my virtual book tour for the Instant Pot Kosher Cookbook, where I talk about mouth-watering recipes without actually serving them to you. So I've been doing Zoom and virtual cooking classes to teens and adults probably since March. Everybody should know that this is my 93rd Zoom cooking class. So I'm very excited to bring you into my kitchen in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and show you the two of my favorite recipes in the book. Now, before I get into the recipe, just a moment about gratitude. If there's one thing that I have learned during this entire pandemic is to be grateful for all of the blessings in our lives of family, of friends, of communities, large and small, and of ingredients. At times it's been hard to get certain ingredients. And now I preserve ingredients. I use the stems. I zest the citrus before I juice it. So I've been trying really hard to really preserve everything that comes into my house. And I am very grateful to be with all of you here today. So people always ask me, like, how did this cookbook come to be? So basically, I was hounded by my fans for Instant Pot recipes, and I had never used the device. So finally, I joined on the bandwagon and got myself an Instant Pot. I think what I made first was like Korean ribs, a lentil soup, and some kind of a bean stew, and I was hooked. Somebody told me about a Kosher Instant Pot Facebook group, which at that time had 8,700 members. It seemed like a lot, right? So right? So I went into the feed and I started seeing all the comments that people were posting about Instant Pot use. And what I saw was that people were really frustrated because there were all these recipes out there that weren't kosher, that they had to adapt kosher. And I realized that this community needed a cookbook. That Instant Pot Facebook group now has 13,900 members. Pretty crazy, right? So
that's a huge jump.
That's right. So that's, so one thing I learned from this experience is that sometimes in life you have to fake it until you make it. And I went from zero to becoming an expert. So now you can too. All right, let's get into the recipe. I'm going to tilt this down so you kind of see what I'm doing here. The first recipe I'm going to make is my Georgian quinoa and beet salad, which was inspired by a recipe that I had in Haifa, Israel on a street food tour. So what I have here is quinoa, and you could use, the white quinoa, the multicolored one, whatever you have. And I rinsed it a little bit. I'm dumping that in my Instant Pot, and I'm adding some water. And now we're going to add beets to it. So the beets cook at the same time as the, where are my other beets? Hold on. There are my other beets. Okay. So I have these beets in cubes. I just want to show everybody briefly how to cut the beets. I will put my gloves on that. Please put on gloves when you are cutting beets. So you're basically going to take a medium beet and peel it. And then what I do is I cut it into thick slices, about kind of a 1/4 to a 1/3 inch. So now I've got these like raw? 2 slices. Yeah, the beets are raw. And I stack them up in stacks like this. And I just cut them into like, kind of the size strips that I want. I turn them the other way, and then I cut them into my little cubes. And these beets are going to cook with the quinoa and the water at the exact same time. Now, you could do this on the stovetop as well, if you wanted to, and just cook it for the amount of time you would normally cook quinoa. So now I've got my beets, my water, and my quinoa into my pot. And I'm going to stir that up. And I'm gonna set it to cook. Now, this is the interesting part of this recipe. So I'm just stirring this up, and I don't know, you can see how like it's already like nice and pink. All right, so I'm gonna set, what you do next is you take your pot cover, you lock it, and you put it on the ceiling. And then I'm gonna set the pressure cooking time. You ready for this? To 0 minutes. Okay, you heard me correctly, 0 minutes. The amount of time it takes for the device to come to pressure is all this recipe needs. All this needs to cook the beets and the quinoa at the same time. So think about what a savings that is. Like, you're not roasting beets in the oven and then cooking the quinoa on the stovetop. It's all in one place. And then I can just let this sit here. Beets cook really fast. You can do like whole beets in 30 minutes, cubed beets in less than 10. So it's a real time saver.
Now, what's the difference between the Instant Pot and a normal pressure cooker?
Well, the old-fashioned pressure cookers were stovetop, and people had a lot of issues with those kind of getting too in the pressure getting too high, but you can still use a regular stovetop pressure cooker. These have been proven to be much safer. I work with the Instant Pot Brands company. This is a 6-quart duo, which is my workhorse. I have another one, my 8-quart right here, which is so great for making stock. So I make chicken stock, vegetable stock, like Brenda said, with like all the vegetable scraps. And I have 2 for meat and 1 for dairy. That just shows you like how obsessed I am with my Instant Pot. And what's so nice about cooking in the Instant Pot is like you have one bowl to clean at the end. You know, it's really nice. And what's nice is like when everything is cooking in here, like you don't have to worry. You don't really have to stand over it. All right, so I am setting this now to the saute function. Hold on, and I'm gonna set it on high. Let me just get that starting. Okay, and so
we have a question. Does the Instant Pot affect the flavor of it at all? Oh, I think you froze on us.
Oh, hold on, sorry. Okay, it preserves all the flavor inside, and it's I find everything to be extremely flavorful. So, you know, and everything is so much faster too. And what I like about it is that, like, if you're cooking something on the stovetop, you're gonna have to keep going over there and stirring it, adding this, adding that. Once you put all your stuff in the pot to cook, you can go do something else. You can go knit, you can, you know, FaceTime with your grandchildren, get back to work, you can do things. You don't have to just stand there. You can go play with your baby if you need to, you know? All right, so I wanna get into our soup recipe now. Now, the saute function on the Instant Pot is literally one of my absolutely favorite features. And I use it in so many ways. I will brown chicken in whole or in parts. I'll brown ground beef. I have a spaghetti bolognese that has both ground beef and flanken, which is like short ribs, a very classic Ashkenazi Jewish meat that we like to cook. And I cook up my vegetables for risotto, for my vegetable paella. I fry onions in it for my lentils and rice recipe. So it's really, really great. And what's nice about it is, you know how when you're cooking on a stovetop and you put your oil in the pan, which all of us will be doing this week for Hanukkah, you put your hand over the pan, you're trying to figure out, when is it ready for me to add my oil or add the pot tells you when it's hot. Okay, so mine is now on. It's gonna say hot, it's gonna say it's hot, which is so great. So once this says hot, I'm gonna go ahead and add my oil and all of my kind of aromatics. So the basic concept is that I started to feel it getting a little hot. You will saute the same way you would do in a pot, right? To make your soup, you might saute like carrots and onions and celery. And once they're clear, you then add the rest of your soup ingredients and your liquid to make your soup. So it's the basic same idea. So I'm just waiting for this to get hot for 1 minute. What I did in the book is that every single recipe walks you through how to use the Instant Pot. So you don't have to go to the beginning of the book and say, what am I supposed to do again? Each recipe walks you through, press this button, turn this way, so that when you pick up the book and pick up any recipe, if you've never used your pot before, it will show you how to use the pot. And I had a lot of fun with writing this book, because I just kept finding other new ways to use it, including making desserts. So, Jared, I'm known as the kosher baker. So initially I got started doing dessert cookbooks, like the kosher baker and the holiday kosher baker. But clearly I can't serve my family babka for dinner every night, at least not every night. And my 4 children I could try. And I think, and it's funny, my 4 children between the ages of almost 21 and 26, they grew up with lots of desserts around. Right now on my counter, I have chocolate quinoa cake, baked donuts, and they'll be eating this for the next few days. But basically what they want food all the time. They really want food. All right, it's still preheating for another second. So, and I had to start developing healthy recipes to kind of balance out all of the desserts in this house. So most of my recipes are really natural. The Healthy Jewish Kitchen Cookbook, which was my last book, doesn't use like mayonnaise or soup stock or any like puff pastry, mayonnaise, barbecue sauce. And what I've been trying to do is kind of move our community to a little bit healthier, but also honor our own food traditions, right? Because we don't want to give up like all those recipes, right, Jared, that are so integral to our culture. But at the same time, we all want to eat a little bit lighter, you know, we definitely do.
Yeah, and making those subtle changes are a big key with healthier lifestyles right now. But you know, you still, like you said, you still want your latkes fried and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Question: does the Instant Pot do air fryer things?
Okay. So good question. There now is an Instant Pot attachment for an air fryer attachment for the Instant Pot. I have set a separate air fryer that I use instead. I made air fryer latkes yesterday for the first time, and they came out really good. They were a little bit dry, but you mentioned fried latkes, Jared, and I want to tell you that I am known for my baked potato latkes from the Healthy Jewish Kitchen Cookbook. You heat two. I know you think it's crazy, right? You take
I do.
Okay, so listen to this method. I want you to try it. You take your jelly roll pans, 2 tablespoons of oil. You heat it up in a 450 oven for 5 minutes. And then you take your latke batter and you drop it on the pan. 10 to 12 minutes, flip them, 8 to 10 minutes, and you have crispy latkes. They were in my refrigerator because I made them last night in a Zoom class, and they were just fabulous.
I'll be trying that this weekend.
Okay, so let's turn down here because now my other device is hot. Okay, so now I'm adding in my oil, and I'm adding in this massive amount. Can you see this here? Onions and garlic and celery. The recipe has leeks, but I didn't have leeks, and we couldn't find them at the store. So instead, I just added more onions. And you hear it, I don't know if you can hear that nice sizzle. So I'm just stirring this up. And this is going to cook for about 5 minutes or so. And you just want to stir it every once in a while. Always make sure it's on high.
Can you, while you're stirring, can you show us the front of the Instant Pot so we know what it looks like?
I can try so it doesn't unplug. This one is the 8-quart. Can you guys see that?
So it's got a nice digital screen, very easy to use.
Yeah, this is the 8-quart has it's really easy to use, I promise. I built an entire new pantry in my kitchen to house my 3 Instant Pots because I have one for dairy. My dairy one I literally use I make my steel cut oatmeal once a week. And the Instant Pot makes amazing, I make grits in it. I make dairy rice pudding. Cheesecake is incredible in the Instant Pot. It literally just like steams, and it's like so, it's like so good. Let me see if I can hold so you can see what's going on in there. So I've got all my onions sitting in there.
So at this point, for everybody that's watching, she's just sauteing like you would any other pot of soup or anything else you're making. It's no different other than it's a freestanding device off of the stove.
Exactly. Okay. So so I just want to tell you that my first Instant Pot has now already come to pressure, so it's done cooking. What happens is the device now immediately switches to warm, and we're going to let this sit for about 10 minutes. I'm going to watch the time so that the quinoa and the beets will continue to kind of steam a little bit. And the device, I don't know if I can turn this around. Let's see if I can show you this thing now. So once, okay, I don't want to release the pressure yet. It's basically, it starts counting up. It'll count down when it cooks, and it counts up again when it's on warm, and it'll tell me when it's 10 minutes. So when it says 10 minutes, then I know I can release any remaining pressure. Now, if your aromatics ever start to brown a little too much, you could turn it down.
Now, this is a great device also if you're doing a larger party and you want to do some rice. That warming feature is very nice to count up so you know exactly how long the rice has been sitting there.
Right, and for Shabbat, the warm feature is essential. It does have a slow cook feature, but don't use it. So what I do, unless you're going to make like cholent before Shabbat, then you could put it on slow cook to stay warm till lunch the next day. But the slow cook function isn't great. But what's so nice is like I'll cook my rice, I'll cook my stew, and it just can sit in here and stay warm until dinner time, which I really, really appreciate. And if at any point anything starts to burn, you can actually turn it down and like get it a little bit, turn down the heat of it. So it's on high right now. I'm going to give it like 2 more minutes. And you just want to cook this until they're clear. So I've been teaching teen cooking classes since the beginning of the summer. I started with baking camps for teenagers who couldn't go anywhere this summer. And now I'm teaching after school Zoom classes for teenagers where they cook dinner for their families from like 4:30 to 6:30. And it's been really popular, and it's my dinner for my family too. But it's been a lot of fun teaching kids, teaching them how to kind of saute the aromatics, how to chop all the vegetables. So I know the parents really appreciate it. So in another minute, I'm going to add my water to this. Now in this recipe, I'm not using soup stock. What I do is I use water, and I use what I call like my kind of soup substitute spice mix, which is onion powder, garlic powder, salt and pepper, turmeric. And for this one, I'm using a little bit of thyme. So instead of using like store-bought stock, if you didn't have homemade, you can just use water and all these spices and basically replicate like a soup powder.
Right, but like you said, this is a great device to make all your stocks at home. Make them in a big batch, put them in, Ziploc bags or quart containers, and just
yes. And make sure you label everything, like dairy, meat, or parve, and how many cups are in it, so that you know. Okay, so now that these onions are clear, I can kind of hold this up a little bit. The onions are clear. I'm going to now add my spice mix over here. So I'm adding my spice mix to the pot. I'm just going to quickly mix that in. I'm going to switch to a wooden spoon. Now, sometimes when you saute things are going to get stuck a little bit to the pot. So you want to deglaze it before you add your other ingredients. I don't know if you can see I'm getting a nice little facial here, which is great because, haven't been to any kind of a spa in a very long time. I'm one of those people who has spent the pandemic at home. All right, now that I've mixed my spices in, I'm going to go ahead and add my water. Now, before I add all the main vegetables, so I'm going to turn this down here. Let me turn you here. Okay, so I've added my water. Now, before I add anything else, I take my wooden spoon and I scrape the bottom of the pot with the wooden spoon to make sure nothing is sticking. Because if anything is sticking to your pot, you could end up with the burn notice. So I just scrape it up a bit before I'm going to go ahead and add my vegetables.
And you can use different vegetables, right? If you don't have anything, like you said, you didn't have leeks.
Right. I didn't use leeks. I used onions. I could have used shallots. If I didn't have enough, if I had more zucchini than broccoli, here I have broccoli and zucchini. Everything is cut into about inch pieces or so. I'm going to dump in all my vegetables here. And I'm going to press cancel on my device. I think I put in more vegetables than I usually do than water. I think I'm going to go grab a little bit more water here because it looks like there's a lot of vegetables there. Okay, just a little bit more. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to put my lid on. This one I don't have to turn to seal, and I turn it up to pressure cook. And this recipe cooks for 5 minutes, okay? You heard that? 5 minutes. Now, it does take about 10 minutes for it to come to pressure. You'll see that.
So all in all, we're looking at less than 30 minutes for this whole shoot.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let me move this over here. All right, so now we've got our 2 pots going. We're going to keep an eye on our quinoa pot.
For those that are watching, you noticed that you just grabbed it barehanded, so the device is not hot at all.
No, nothing is hot. Not even the sides are warm. Nothing's hot here. The only thing you have to be careful for is when the steam comes out, but I will show you how to do that. I'll show you my little tip, which I'm not really allowed to show because the Instant Pot company doesn't believe in it, but that's fine. All right, I'm just going to move some things over here. Okay, so I want everybody for a moment. Now, I've explained to you how the saute function works. So you guys have like a visual in your mind about what I'm about to share with you. So I want everybody here to imagine that you, yourself, is a cube of carrot that has been thrown into the Instant Pot. So when you get into the pot, you immediately feel like the shock of the heat, but you look around, you see other vegetables, so you're not alone, so you're okay. But then more vegetables get thrown in, or meat or beans, and it starts to get crowded and a little uncomfortable. And then the liquid comes in, so you feel like you're kind of drowning. And then you adjust to that. But then the lid is sealed, you are locked inside, and now a massive amount of pressure is building up all around you. And just when you think you can't take it any longer, it's done cooking, right? Because it's an Instant Pot, so you're not cooking things for a really long time. So the So the device, the pressure gets released quickly, or the device immediately goes to warm. And now you're at this like comfortable place where it's not so bad. And then at some point, the lid is open, you see the light, and you can plan your escape. Basically, this is how we have all felt during COVID. We have felt at times under immense pressure, Other times it's like we're on the warm setting where we've got this like new normal where we have to adjust to a level of pressure that's part of our everyday lives. At times it's been overwhelming. At times it's been, something that we can actually kind of handle, but it's been persistent, right? And I feel like at some point, I think we all see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. The pressure will be released and we will all be able to like get out of this pressure cooker of a life that we live. We will be placed on a serving platter, presented to our family and friends, people whose smiles we can actually see. And I pray for that day when we can all plan our escape from our pressure cookers in our lives.
That's really how we all feel. That's a great example.
Before this book, the book was all done, I thought about the idea of talking about pressure in our lives with talking about the pressure cooker, because I'm always trying to include like some kind of an inspirational message whenever I do my events. And then this all happened. And I thought, oh my God, this is like how we actually feel, right, Jared? Like it's ups and downs.
It really is. We have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So, and one of these is my question too. I have one at home. I have the 8-quart, I believe. But do you find it beneficial to have 2 of them?
So,
oh, you froze on us. So, I mean, as an executive chef, I use this too, but she's back.
Yeah, so I like having the big one, like I said, to make a lot of soup, a lot of stock. I like the smaller one for most of all the recipes in the book were written for the 6-quart, so you don't have to have the 8-quart. I find it really useful. Listen, in olden times for Rosh Hashanah, Thanksgiving, Passover, I've got every burner going, right? And then I have all the pots that are waiting on the counter for their turn to like get on the stovetop, right? But now the Instant Pots give you another way to cook things. And then once you cook it, you can just forget about it. Like you don't have to focus on it.
Now, this is actually a question for both of us. What's your favorite Instant Pot setting or technique to use? Mine's personally just the pressure cooker, because I'm terrified of the stovetop pressure cookers, because I working in the kitchen, I've seen them blow up.
I know I've heard those stories, so I never had one growing up. It's totally scary, right? So yeah, definitely, it's definitely safer for sure.
But what's your favorite technique to use in it?
So I would say it's the saute and the pressure cooking feature, but I also use the rice function. Like the rice function is really easy. I'll do 1-to-1 rice to water and push rice, and then I can just ignore it. Yeah, and then it cooks briefly. Rice cooks just in a few minutes, like 2 to 5 minutes really. And then it just sits on the natural release, which is what we've done here. On the quinoa hin. Okay, so I want everybody, I'm gonna turn this so you guys can see what's happening here. So you see what happens here? It says 11, now it's at 11 minutes. So that's how long it's been on warm. Okay, and now what we can do here, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it, hold on, see if you can see this. I'm gonna turn the top, and then I'm gonna turn it to venting. I wanna do this, and whenever you do this, do it carefully. You could do it with a spoon or a towel. Now I don't have that much pressure left because it's been sitting for 10 minutes. And once the pressure kind of knob goes down, then I can open up it up.
And remember, can you go over what's in this pot again? What you started with?
Yeah, it's really simple. It's water, raw quinoa, and beets. All right, let me hold it up to show you guys so you can see what it looks like, but I'm gonna scoop it into a bowl in a minute. So this is what it looks like in here. So I'm removing my inner pot, and I'm gonna get my pressure cooker pot out of the way here so I have some place to work. And we're gonna put this into a bowl, and you can see what it looks like, which is really, really cool. Here, let me tilt this down a little bit more so you can see my bowl. I'm using a black bowl just because the contrast is just so pretty. So, and usually once I do this, I'm gonna let it cool for a little bit. So the bowl is gonna be a little hot, so you're gonna wanna have like an oven mitt or any kind of a trivet. So in the book, I have lots of like traditional Jewish recipes. I have brisket, I have honey cake, I have my grandmother's stuffed cabbage, I have simmis, I have Israeli recipes, shakshuka, beet tahini, and a lot of them are with my own little modern twists on them. I have like Moroccan harira soup. I have international recipes. One of my favorite uses of the Instant Pot you were asking about is pot cooking. So listen to this. You basically make I have a recipe for a dal, but you can make some kind of a chili or stew. And then after you have all your ingredients in the pot for the stew, you take can you guys see this pretty color? So the whole thing is pink. So now I'm just going to stir this and let this cool a little bit. So this should cool. I'm going to spread it out in the bowl so it cools up. So I take my stew ingredients are in the pot. I put the Instant Pot comes with a rack. I'll see if I can find it quickly to show you guys. All right, here's the little rack. So you put this rack. So imagine you have stew at the bottom of your pot. You put this rack on top of it. And then on top of that, I take a 6-inch round pan. I put in rice and water. And I cover up my Instant Pot for a certain amount of time for each recipe. And then what happens is the rice cooks at the same time as the stew. So when you open up your pot, you have an entire meal done, which is really, really amazing.
Yeah, it's super convenient to use that rack.
All right, so I'm just gonna get all the ingredients, just gonna quickly show you getting the ingredients ready for the finalizing the salad here. So I'm going to add all these things in about 9 minutes or so. But what I have here is a celery chopped into like 1/4-inch pieces. I have Italian parsley roughly chopped. And roughly chopped means you basically take your knife and go like this. And then you're like, okay, that's good enough. I've got lemon juice and olive oil, and I've got walnuts. A great tip about nuts, I'm sure you know this, Jared, is nuts can go bad. So before you use nuts in any recipe, taste them. Even ground nuts, taste them before you use them. Because I did a video recently of a Syrian sauce called mahamara, like a dip with walnuts, and I tasted it during my video, and it tasted rancid. And then I tasted my nuts afterwards, and it was terrible.
Yeah, what I do with my nuts around the house is I roast them all off and then freeze them. But I use a food saver bag to freeze them to try to preserve them as long as possible.
No, that's a great idea. And so I'm just going to show you how I cut up the green onions. And when I teach people cooking, I'm all about efficiency. I like to do things as quickly as possible. So I've trimmed all of my green onions here. So what I'm going to do is I wind them up together and I'm going to cut them all in half. So now I've got like a whole handful here of these. And I can cut them all at the same time. I'm going to cut these kind of on an angle. And whenever I teach kids how to cook, like even like 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, I teach them how to chop by holding the knife like this and putting their hand here and then kind of using it like a guillotine and like chopping down. That way their hand is nowhere near the blade. And it's such a great way to chop things because, if you get distracted for 1 second, you won't cut yourself, which we chefs find that we do all the time.
Yep. Got more scars than I can count on my hands.
So this cookbook tells my own kind of personal food story. So a lot of the recipes will have stories of my childhood. And I always say that like everybody has kind of their own food story because, we've all had all these different food experiences in our lives. And these are all different sizes. And I don't worry about it so much because I want this recipe to be kind of crunchy. So now I've got all my ingredients ready. And I'm going to stir this again to cool it down. And I'll mix it all up together in a few minutes. And it's just super, super simple. I actually have on YouTube some videos of my trip to Israel where I tasted something like this.
Would you recommend doing this quinoa ahead of time?
Sure. So you could do this, if you were to serve it for dinner, I would do it in the morning and then you could mix it up in the afternoon. I like to mix it up right before I serve it. I don't like things to get mushy. So I'm really about adding things like nuts and crunchy vegetables kind of later, but it'll still be really good as a leftover the next day, I promise. So a little bit about my own food story. Let's see what's happening here. It's still coming. Oh, it's almost coming to pressure. Excellent. The 8-quart one is kind of cool. It tells you, it has a little mountain that tells you as the pressure is building. So you know if you're like almost there. But I know this usually takes a little bit of time. Once it's at pressure, it only cooks for 5 minutes. So a little bit about my own food story. When I was 12 years old, I used to sit in my grandmother's kitchen in Brooklyn, watching her measure cake ingredients with her hands. And she was like the great kind of cooking and baking influence in my life. And, I didn't even think that food was a career until I was like 30 years old. So I basically went to college at Brandeis to become a doctor, ended up in law school after a chemistry accident. And I practiced law for 4 years before my husband's work for the US government sent us to Geneva, Switzerland. And I had a legal job there too. But after my daughter Emily was born, I left that job, went to cooking school in Paris just for fun, not planning a new career. And then when I would come back to Geneva, people wanted me to do like catering for them. And then I started teaching cooking classes there. And I came back to the US, edited somebody else's cookbooks, and finally started writing my own. So it's been an amazing journey. Getting the Kosher Baker out took me 5 years because every publisher told me there was no market for kosher baking cookbooks. Obviously, I proved them wrong. And then, one book after another came out, and, it's been an amazing journey. What's really cool is that 35 years after sitting in grandma's kitchen, I was invited by a synagogue to teach a cooking class in their rabbi's house. The rabbi had bought my grandmother's house. So I taught a class in that same kitchen where I was there as a little girl.
That's amazing.
It was so great. And I thought I would be overwhelmed because grandma was gone. She had lived to age 98 on a steady diet of sponge cake and sanka. But at that moment, I felt like this is what I was meant to be doing, And so all of you in the audience, you all have your own food story. Whether it's like meals you had in your mother's or grandmother's or aunt's kitchens, meals you cooked off campus in college, when you first were married, your first apartment when you got divorced, what you fed your children, and also when we used to travel, all of those wonderful, culinary experiences you've had around the world. And I implore all of you, when you plan menus for your household, take pieces of your past and bring them to the present. Just like in normal times, we have old and young at the table, have old recipes and then new recipes like you're getting from me today, and combine them and tell the people at your table why these recipes from your past are important to you. And that way you can kind of pass it on to the next generation.
Those, food's incredible, and what it can do for, as a family and memories. It's taking a bite of something. I did a dinner 2 nights ago, and I made a goat's milk vanilla bean ice cream. And
you're killing me.
I brought the husband back to his childhood when he used to go to camp in Greece.
Oh my goodness, that's so beautiful.
And it's just like it's all these different things. Sometimes you don't even know it's about to happen, and it happens. Scent is a big thing, taste, memories. Mm-hmm. And that's why we need to pass these down. And Jews aren't a huge population in the world, so it's important to really pass down our traditions.
100%. And as a community, we tell our food story through cookbooks, right? Like if you look at all the cookbooks or, over the last 100 years, it tells the story of waves of immigration from different places in America, how we adapted recipes from the old country to ingredients in America, or how new ingredients were released to the public, like Crisco or margarine or whatever else, and how we started using those in the recipe. So I love writing cookbook because I feel like I'm contributing to that kind of library of, culinary stories. And so, I feel very, very blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah. So quick question about the veggies in front of you.
Yes.
What is the quantity of veggies that you are using here?
In the soup or in the quinoa?
What you have on the sheet tray right there.
Okay. So it's like a 1.5 cups of walnut halves that I chopped roughly. This was 1 1 stalk of celery. I've got 4 green onions. I've got parsley was about 2/3 of a cup, but obviously that's flexible. I've got a tablespoon of lemon juice, 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I'm going to add salt and pepper and cumin at the end. Okay, so this has been cooling a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding all these ingredients. So I've got my olive oil here and lemon juice. I think I mentioned this before. You should zest all your citrus before you juice it, and save the citrus separately, like in a little plastic bag or in a plastic wrap in the freezer or in the fridge. I use the zest for salad dressings or chicken or fish, so I get more uses out of my ingredients that way.
And for a quick note, the ratio of 3-to-1 oil to vinegar or oil to acid is a good indication for everybody. If you like it a little zestier with the acid, lemon juice, vinegar, whatever, add a little bit more. It's okay.
Yeah, you have to taste things, right, Jared? Like you can't just follow recipes. I want you to taste things because, for me, it's always so hard to have salt and pepper in a recipe because everybody has different tastes. And I don't like to put too much salt in cooking things. I like to add kosher salt at the end, like just enough.
Yeah, and remember, we, as chefs and cooks, we use kosher salt. We're not using that table salt. It makes a huge difference. You can use a lot more kosher salt than you would, and it's as salty.
So I'm mixing this up. I'm going to add a little bit of the walnuts, but I'm probably going to add the rest of my walnuts later. So this will be my family's dinner tonight. That's been the benefit of all the Zoom classes because I'm able to, these are my meals that my family eats, especially I have 2 kids teen cooking classes this week, and which will be really fun. Can you guys see the color of this? It is so beautiful. It's like the pink contrast with all the beautiful green items in it.
Yeah, the color is exquisite.
Right, and you see, we did this in like 30 minutes, barely, while we were chatting. So here, and then you just mix in the walnuts. So I'm going to put a few in now, but then I will do the rest later. And just gently mix this up. And when you think about, serving things, I like to put things in very contrasting color plates. Okay, I think my soup is finally, nope, it's not. Oh, it just came to pressure. Good timing, boy. I couldn't have timed that right. I've done like 44. I've done 44 television shows, and it's amazing to me how things go wrong, and you just have to kind of roll with it. Which is perfectly fine. Okay, so I'm back over here, right? I just want to hold this up right now. Can you guys see how pretty this is?
It looks great.
It's really, really great. So. And the quinoa has protein in it. By doing the quinoa and the soup together, I'm going to end up with a meal. So this is going to cook for 5 minutes. And then I'm going to do a quick release, which you're going to hear like a crazy amount of pressure going off in my kitchen. Then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to add spinach, basil, and frozen peas. Now, I add the spinach. So if you've ever made a green soup, and you know this too, Jared, like you make a broccoli soup, like by the time you puree it, you're like, oh, it's not really bright green anymore. It's kind of like brownish green, right? You know that. And especially you're opening a restaurant, it's got to be beautiful, right? Yeah. So my trick for green soups is after my soup is done cooking, and if I was cooking this on the stovetop, this will probably cook maybe 20, 25 minutes. I turn the pot off. I add in spinach, basil, peas. Sometimes I cut more zucchini in little cubes, throw that in. Sometimes I shave the tops of the broccoli off and add that at the end. And it sits for 2 minutes only. And then you puree it. And that helps you make sure that your soup is green. Here, I'm just going to show you all these things here. And I realized I forgot to get out my honey. Honey is like literally one of my secret ingredients in cooking. And I always tell people that honey is basically what you use if something doesn't taste right. So let's see if we can find my honey bear. And I'm going to give you some tips because everybody hates measuring honey. So I'm going to explain to you my special secret for measuring honey when we get to it. All right. I've got 4 more minutes there. Do we have any more questions?
Actually, we did have a question touching on the latkes you talked about. Just quick on the timing for when you put them in the oven.
The latkes. Okay. So baked latkes. I'm going to be posting the link to the baked latke recipe on my Instagram today. So anybody who wants to follow me, it's at Kosher Baker. So today, after this, I will be posting that recipe. So it's basically, you have a 450 oven that's hot. You put the pans in for 5 minutes to heat, and then you add your batter. And then they cook for like, 8 to 10 minutes aside. The best baking tip I can give you is that everybody's oven is a little different. And, I'm sure, Jared, you've been in different kitchens, you've traveled, you've cooked in other family members' kitchens. Sometimes the same recipe just doesn't come out the same. So I always tell people to subtract baking time. So if my cake recipe says bake it for an hour, you're going to bake it for 50, 40 minutes, 30. Cookies for 14 minutes, time them for 12. And check it, because you can always add time. It's harder to like take it away afterwards. So I have 2 ovens now, 2 different kinds of ovens. So that helps me get better ranges in my recipes. But everybody should always just be conservative on how much time they bake something for. Because if you have a high-end oven, things are going to bake so much faster. And it's frustrating, right? Like you want chewy cookies and your cookies are hard.
It is. We used to have the double stack at work. The top one would cook so much faster than the bottom. Don't know why, it just wasn't calibrated the same. And we would cook short ribs in the top. And then that would be full during dinner service, and we'd be cooking them in the bottom, and just never seemed to come out the same way.
Right. And I think it's really frustrating for home cooks, because as a home cook, like you really want to follow the recipe and have it come out exactly right. But what I'm telling you is that you have to trust yourself. Like, and I try really hard with my recipes to stand in the shoes of people in the kitchen. I try to walk them through a recipe, not just say bake it for 20 minutes, but this is what it should look like. Okay. I also try to minimize the amount of dishes and stuff. I mean, my grandmother's stuffed cabbage, like she taught me how to make it when she was 88 years old in my kitchen in Washington, D.C., tiny kitchen. She used 4 burners. She had 4 pots going. She had every surface covered. Nobody wants to wash that many dishes. So I got it down to like, now with the Instant Pot, it's 1, but I got it down to 2 saucepans in my last cookbook, where I have a healthier version of it with brown rice and turkey versus like ground beef and white rice in the healthy book. Because I feel like, I wanted something traditional, but I also wanted it to be healthier. And honestly, it still tastes like grandma's recipe. I think that just because you make something lighter doesn't mean it's going to be bad.
No, not at all. It's, it's just healthier, and that's what all of us chefs do too. It's just like subtle twists on things we've seen or eaten or tried or whatever.
All right. So let me just show you this. So my pot here is now beeping. It's beeping because it already cooked for 5 minutes. Okay. So now I am basically going to release the pressure on here. And in every recipe, I tell you, like if there's quick release or natural release, I'm going to turn this away from my light fixtures. It's like a tornado from Wizard of Oz. Can you see that? Now, sometimes, so you don't want to do this under your cabinet. And sometimes what I will do, but you're not really supposed to, is I'll put a towel over it briefly just so that it's not going crazy. And this takes a little bit of time. So this is the thing you have to be careful. My kids really like using the Instant Pot because you can do so much with it. And like people in college or post-college, they have small kitchens and they can't have a zillion pots and pans. So this cooks so much. Plus all the smell stays inside, so you don't have like your neighbor smelling all your food. All right, we're almost there. So the Instant Pot itself is a great Hanukkah gift.
Yeah, and like she said, keep it away from light fixtures, underneath cabinets. Definitely here's the smoke detectors. Anything like that.
I know. We have an air purifier in the room. I'm waiting for that to go on whenever I cook anything these days. And just because I talked to you about the baked latkes, I also do the same method for the latkes to bake schnitzel. I do have a mini deep fryer, and I definitely fry things too. So I'm a big, Hanukkah's coming, and I do a balance of air frying, deep frying, baking, because I don't want to eat everything fried. All right, do we have any other questions?
Right now, we do not have any other questions. I have a personal question.
Excellent.
With all this Zoom cooking classes, right?
Right.
What are you doing with leftovers? Because if you're doing all these classes and your family's eating, that's great. And I know, us as a family, we eat a lot too, but eventually you have like backup in the fridge.
Oh my God, absolutely. And so at one point during COVID, I had my 4 children here, but from Labor Day until Rosh Hashanah, I guess we had nobody here. And then from Rosh Hashanah till Thanksgiving, it was just the 2 of us. So the biggest problem was the baked goods from the baking camp in the summer. So I have freezing instructions for all my recipes in my baking cookbooks, the Kosher Baker and the Holiday Kosher Baker. So I have a lot of stuff in my freezer. Anybody sick, anybody needs to pick me up, they're getting a challah, they're getting, I've done so many challah bakes and babka bakes. So I have so much challah in the freezer. But even if I have extra soup, I'm going to freeze that too. All right, so I'm just going to show you guys. I now have the pressure is out of here. When I open it up, it's still very bubbly. And I'm just going to stir that up a minute. Perfect. And now the device is on warm, which is fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and add a ton of spinach, okay?
For those that spinach, that much spinach will end up being about this much cooked.
Right, I'm gonna press it inside in a second.
So what is that, 1 whole bag of spinach?
It's like, yeah, it's basically, it's 7 cups, so I just do 7 handfuls. It's kind of how I measure it. It's usually about right. Oh, you know what? I was supposed to have added the peas before. All right, live and learn. That's fine. Let's pop the peas in here. That's okay. And now I'm going to add a bunch of beautiful basil leaves.
And those basil are corn or?
Yeah,
or
those are, yeah. Right, I'm just going to press all this into the liquid here. Just press it in, and literally going to put the cover on for only 2 minutes, and then I'm going to puree this whole thing. And the one thing about pureeing is whenever you puree a soup, I want you to use your immersion blender. I'm going to add a bunch of grinds of my pepper. And then I'm going to add the honey now. Usually I can add it later too. Okay, so this is my trick for adding honey, right? So everybody knows measuring honey is kind of a pain, right? Because it just gets stuck to your measuring spoon. So what I tell people is a short squeeze is a teaspoon. A longer squeeze, 1, 2, 3 seconds, is a tablespoon. And now you don't have to wash anything messy. So I'm going to put this on for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and puree it. And I'll be able to show you the color of that. Oh, I forgot some of my basil. Hold on, go back. Okay, good. And it could be, if you didn't have basil, you could use cilantro, you could use parsley, just something green will kind of perk up the color of this.
You know, mint might even be an addition into this.
Absolutely. So, what attracted me to the Instant Pot initially was that it cooks comfort foods, the kind of foods that my grandmother would make for me, the kinds of foods that and when I talk about comfort food, I'm not talking about Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I'm talking about those dishes from our traditions or even contemporary ones that nourish our body and soul, the kinds of recipes that you can share with other people, right? You can put things into containers and give them to friends, or you could freeze it so that any of those soups or stews are available if somebody needs it more than you do. So I feel right now we need comfort food now more than ever. And now that we're all getting into winter, and it's clearly going to be a difficult winter, both physically and emotionally, you want to have these warm, soothing kinds of dishes available for your family and for yourself, because it really is kind of what we need right now.
We've got about 7 minutes left.
Okay, so I'm going to do my wrap up, and then if there's any other questions, I'm just letting this sit for a minute or two, and then I'm not going to do the immersion blender on air, but you guys get the idea. One of the most important kitchen tools. If your family members do not have them, this is the best Hanukkah present you can buy them. I use it all the time, okay? This one's made by Cuisinart, but I just love using it. So as I mentioned before, and as Jared and I talked about, we are all under so much pressure these days. And when I was writing the book, I kept thinking of the song Under Pressure from Freddie Mercury and David Bowie in my head, right? So if you think about the song, the lyrics basically said, pressure, pushing down on me, pushing down on you. And in the song, it says, the pressure is the terror of knowing what the world is about. Watching some people screaming, let me out. Okay, remember that carrot in the Instant Pot? Sitting there and going let me out, right? Well, the song ultimately asks, can't we give ourselves one more chance? Can't we give love that one more chance? Now, with the Instant Pot, fast food finally means something like positive and nourishing, and clearly we can use the food that we make in our devices to like nourish each other. Now, Hanukkah teaches us that we don't have to be perfect. We just have to do something. We just have to take one step forward. So the Maccabees, they found a really small amount of oil in the temple. And rather than giving up or abandoning their efforts, because they didn't think they would accomplish much with that small amount of oil, they lit the menorah and it lasted 8 nights. So what I'm telling you now is that like food gives us a way to like give love a chance, and we can use food to comfort each other during this time. And I feel like by doing that, kind of that's where the healing in our communities, in our country, in our world during the pandemic can really start.
That's lovely.
Thank you. So now I've got I'm just going to show you what this looks like in here. So I've got kind of, you see how like all the leaves have wilted. So now I'm going to go ahead and puree it so that I preserve that greenness. If it sits too long, and then once it's pureed, then it's just going to sit there. So I'm telling everybody here, when you puree the soup, I want you to do it for 3 entire minutes. The difference between 1 minute and 3 minutes is dramatic. So whether you have a Vitamix or a food processor, remember we used to puree everything in a food processor, Jared, and everything with tsunami over the sides, right? So the immersion blender is super simple because you just pop it in there. You can see it, I have it standing up in there, and I'm gonna puree that. And then to garnish it, and this is like always a way to uplift any dish, right? Like take your bowl of soup and drizzle olive oil on it, more pepper and salt. You could also toast pine nuts is a nice way to decorate a soup like this. And if you ever have any leftover bread or challah or even bagels, cut it into cubes and like cook it on the stovetop in a little bit of oil, and then you have croutons. I actually made my stuffing for Thanksgiving out of 2 bags of the heels of every challah and sourdough for the last 8 months was my stuffing for Thanksgiving. So I don't throw out anything. Another thing I just wanted to add, I have a Facebook group called Kosher Baker that people can join. It's where other people, not just me, share wonderful baking ideas that they have and their pictures. So that's really fun. And I'm going to be posting more recipes on my website, thekosherbaker.com, as well as through Instagram at Kosher Baker over the next couple of days. But look for the latke recipe because I know people were interested in that. That will be posted this afternoon, both on the website and through Instagram. And yeah, I wish everybody a really delicious and safe Hanukkah, and to continue to stay well and to keep everybody else safe. And feel free to message me with any questions anytime. Once people find me, they'll start messaging me like an hour before Shabbat or an hour before every Jewish holiday. This year, I did not get questions about pie at 3 p.m. on Thursday, on Thanksgiving Day, which I often do. So join the legions of people who love to bug me before holidays. And I welcome, you can, well, I think you probably even have more experience than I do, Jared. So, I do appreciate that. I actually have a son at the University of Michigan, so that is my Michigan connection.
There you go.
Yeah, I actually debuted my Healthy Jewish Kitchen Cookbook for a synagogue for the H group in Detroit before that book came out, and I made my famous chocolate quinoa cake, which you can Google. It's a gluten-free cake with cooked quinoa that Food 52 called the Genius Recipe. It's my most famous recipe to date. Very proud of creating a chocolate cake that everybody can enjoy.
Well, we appreciate your time, and thank you very much for everything. This was very informative.
Well, this was really fun for me too, and I wish you could taste this delicious food. I have a bright green soup here and this pink salad. It's also on the cover. Yeah, we got this on the cover here. So I highly encourage everyone to buy the book from the book fair's booksellers, and if anybody on here needs any Instant Pot recipes between now and the time they get the book, feel free to message me and I will shoot you a recipe that isn't in the book.
And this is a pre-release event, so it is not out yet. It's the later 3rd of January is the earliest you could get it with a pre-order, and it's being released in February. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I was told that books will start shipping out to various distributors like mid-January. So get in your orders now, so you'll be in the first wave of people. You know, with every book release, I'm always like, oh, this is going to be the big one, and you just never know. But in case it is, you don't want to have to wait for reprinting. So everyone's at home, and I think it's such a nice time to challenge yourself with like a new project in the kitchen, right? Like, you know, we all have the same things we make all the time, but since we have more time on our hands, like, I think it's a good time to try something new.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on the book festival.
Thank you, Paula and Jared, for being with us today and for such an informative and delicious event. And thanks to all of you at home for joining us. Our next Food Day event is the Berkshire's Farm Table Cookbook, 125 homegrown recipes from the New England Hills, today at 1:30. So remember to like this video, subscribe to our new YouTube channel, and visit our website, culturalarts.jccdet.org/bookfair for our full schedule, where you can pre-order Paula's book and for ways to get involved. Stay safe and have a great day.